Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. Are the podcasters and the streamers and the influencers taking over the space once monopolized by the mainstream media in covering and framing our federal election? I know just the guy to give us his insights. Your friend and mine, a political commentator and YouTuber based here in Vancouver. He is JJ McCullough, and this is The Crunch. So, JJ, one of the big narratives out of the US presidential election was how Donald Trump bypassed the mainstream media and sat with people like Joe Rogan, Adin Ross, Logan Paul, and effectively was able to get out his message that way through those alternative media avenues. Is that something that we're going to see here in the Canadian federal election?
My suspicion would be no, in part because I just don't think that we in this country have sort of celebrities of that kind of like megawatt voltage that would be useful for the Canadian politicians to sort of pander to in the same sort of way, right? Like in some ways, the Canadian equivalent of those people are just the American people because they're just as popular with Canadians as they are with anybody else.
I've seen a lot of calls for Pierre Poilievre to go on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah,
I don't know how plausible that is, but yeah, you're right.
No, and Pierre was getting some flack from some right-wingers the other day because apparently he refused an appearance on some American sort of conservative
on the Patrick Bet-David podcast.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I forgot. But no, but see, like the problem though, I think in another world, people like Pierre might be considering doing that kind of thing. But of course, we're in this very sensitive moment of US-Canada relations now, where we see, like, for example, how much flack Premier Notley has gotten by going on the Ben Shapiro show, right? There's an idea that if
you mean Premier Smith?
Sorry, yeah, Premier Smith of Alberta. I'm one premier behind. Yes. No, but it's like the same thing. Like, if you're seen as getting too cozy with the Americans right now, even if it's just kind of like the American influencer class, you know, your patriotism starts to be questioned and all of that. But the problem is that there's no Canadian equivalent of these people. So if you're kind of eschewing the big American sort of figures, there's no kind of like second best sort of dime store Canadian equivalent.
Is it just that the names are not as household? Because I feel like we do have great creators, yourself included. I'm thinking of someone like Rachel Gilmore, who has a good reach, Brittle Star, but perhaps they're not the household names that someone like a Joe Rogan would be, or even an Adin Ross or a Logan Paul. Is that kind of the issue?
Yeah, they're not household names, and they're just not popular at quite the same level, right?
So you're speaking like, of yourself right now.
No, I mean, like, because, well, like, I'm like, you know, not to pat myself on the back too much, but like, I'm probably like the biggest Canadian, like, independent, like, commentary and Canadian issues channel on YouTube, right? I'm reaching out to these folks. I hope they do go on my show. I feel like that would be a big get for me. But, you know, again, like, not to flatter myself too much, but there's not really like a strong sort of second tier. And me, like, I don't even have 1 million subs. So like, I'm nowhere near like in the Joe Rogan, Adin Ross sort of universe. So, you know, is it that much better use of your time to go on some sort of like mid-sized YouTube channel as opposed to just do one more interview for CTV or just do a press conference or just post your own thing on Twitter or Instagram or whatever? I just don't think that that the calculus is necessarily in the favor of these low-level Canadian social media types.
And is that where we're seeing that they are going directly to social media? Obviously, Pierre Poilievre in particular has been putting out these like mini documentaries. Yeah. Even his policy announcements feel like this documentary style announcement. So is that kind of the approach that maybe they're taking, is just going direct to consumer?
I think that's exactly it. I think that Pierre Poilievre got enormously a good sort of reception when he did make these kind of sort of self-produced sort of YouTube viral videos. I mean, his campaign is, I think, proven pretty apt at this kind of stuff. I think the Carney campaign, the Singh campaign are trying to do sort of similar things. I mean, I think, you know, they're following, like, in some ways, they are just the biggest celebrities that we have in the realm of politics.
That's
it's just
really sad,
the politicians,
JJ,
right?
That sounds really sad.
But, you know, like, Pierre in particular has always been very sort of savvy at sort of playing the social media game. And when you're sort of dealing with just kind of like a smaller, more niche market, you know, you don't kind of develop these kind of like auxiliary commentary sort of industries, the American sort of commentariat industrial complex. It just doesn't exist in Canada. You just go directly to the source a lot more often.
So none of the camps got back to you yet?
Well, I'm in talks with Pierre's people.
Okay, that seems like the most likely.
I feel like that's the most likely. I am in some degree of talks with the Singh people as well. So I'm sort of second most sort of optimistic about that. But, you know, like the way, not to reveal too much of the industry secrets, but it's sort of like, you know, you get one and then hopefully the other dominoes fall.
There's not a lot of time though.
There isn't a lot of time. But I'm hoping that once I get one of these locked down, if I can get PR on, which I'm pretty confident I will, I'm hoping that then Singh and even Carney might be open-minded. Because as we saw with the situation with Trump and Kamala Harris, right? It's like the second one candidate goes on a show, the immediate questions are, why doesn't, you know, the other candidate go on?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm willing to have anybody on. You know, Rogan said in theory he was willing to have anybody on. So I think that, you know, you have to kind of be not too precious about this, even if the character is somewhat sort of controversial. If you're erring on the side of just getting maximum exposure, I don't think you can afford to be too picky.
Willing to have anyone on, and yet you forgot the name Maxime Bernier.
And Elizabeth May.
May.
Well, I'm only one man. I can't interview everybody, right? Christian heritage, libertarian, right? I mean, you got to draw the line
not
somewhere.
Everyone, not anyone, to be clear.
I mean, not everyone's going to be on the debate stage either, right? We all make our decisions about these kinds of things. Right?
Wow. JJ, always appreciate your insights. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Folks, thank you so much for watching. And of course, thank you to JJ McCullough and Mike DeYoung for tonight's show. How are you getting informed on the federal election? Please tell me about it and shoot me an email, mo@thisisvancolor.com. That was for JJ, by the way. I know you can't get your news from Meta. That's Facebook and Instagram because social media sucks. And you can't rely on Twitter because it's a mess and who knows what's real on there. But you can follow me on all the socials @VanColor. We're back next week and maybe we'll talk more about the election or maybe we'll totally ignore it. I haven't actually decided yet. Until then, be colorful. Peace.